This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, Happy Monday, Super Bowl week. Hi everyone. I'm heading to New Orleans. Obviously I'm doing this in my basement today, but heading to New Orleans tomorrow. And I can't tell you who I'm getting for guests this week because it's all very, very, very fluid, but hopefully some good ones. I do know that Scott Jackson will come on if that that really floats your boat, because he's already reached out to me going, are you there? So we'll be trading, I'm sure, interviews with one another. But I'm excited to go down to New Orleans. I can't believe I'm saying this because you know how I love Vegas. Better place for this. Way, way, way better place for this. So I'm excited to see what the Super Bowl is. And I'm over my hangover because it took about 4 days to go. It was so close to us being in it. So close to us being in it. Took a few days to get over that part of it.
Yeah, for me, it was actually, I think yesterday was when I was finally over it, when there was no football on at all whatsoever. Yeah. I think that's where I was like, all right, let's just start counting this thing down to next week for the Super Bowl. So, yeah, that's where I've landed at this point. To your point, too, on Scott Jackson, breaking news over the weekend, he did join Instagram, something that he said was for children. So I thought that was funny. That he joined that. So I just want to say that.
As soon as we get TikTok back, he'll join that too. So
TikTok never left. What are you talking about? It never left.
Well, you can't update it, right? Isn't that what the deal is?
It never left. Either way.
Yeah, right. It's never you can't make that go away.
Yeah, exactly.
It exists.
Yes. Correct.
It exists. So, if it exists, it exists. You can't make it go away.
It's on the internet.
Not that I care. I think that one's for children. That's the one where I'm I'm aware it exists. Every time I've opened it up, I see the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life, and I just can't deal with it.
TikTok is the one that scares me when I have scrolled on it for 10 minutes, because it's too much. It's all too much. I can't do it.
Turns your mind into mush.
I feel dumber every single time I open that app. So no, I've just paused that one.
I'll get back into the Super Bowl in a minute, but I have to we got to start with what the world's talking about, which is honestly the craziest NBA trade in the history of the sport. I can't think of one that's more surprising or stranger. Well, not even stranger. I know what it's about. I think we all know what it's about, with the Luka Doncic to the Lakers. And there's so many layers to this. One, and I think it's just first to say this, guys, why don't you tell us what this is really about? Because if you're going to, the worst part of this is you giving everybody some cockamamie, twist yourself in a pretzel type of excuse of why you're going to do it. We think defense wins championships. Try again. That's not going to fly. That's really dumb. None of us are dumb. The modern sports fan pays way too close attention to all of this stuff to know that that's not what this is about. He's 25. Anthony Davis is 32. Both of them get injured, but Davis gets injured more often than Doncic. Doncic might be the best player in the NBA going right now when he's healthy. You know it. We know it. Everybody knows it. He's got a long road ahead of him. You don't trade people like this in the NBA. So why don't you come back to me and tell me what this is really about? Because I'm pretty sure I know you didn't want to sign him to that contract for whatever reason. But this is, on its face, maybe the worst trade I've ever heard of in my life.
It's up there. I think what's going to happen here is we're going to get the Athletic, the Shams ESPN piece, the inside the franchise piece eventually. I don't know if it's going to come out during the season, but I'm with you. There's clearly something up here. Is it weight? Is it drinking beer? Is it him not being a leader? Is it all of the above? clearly they were not comfortable giving out this, super max to him. Now that he's been traded, he can't get a super max, by the way, which is a big implication for him.
He also goes from Texas to California, so the taxes are very, very different for him as well. There's a huge, not that anyone cares, because he's getting he's not getting 375 million, he's getting 300 million.
Sure.
Sorry, I feel terrible for you, right?
It's still it's still significant. Like
it is,
even if you're not him and you're there, it's still significant.
100%.
And just what I thought was, look, I don't mind the Mavericks thinking of, I don't feel comfortable giving this guy this money, this contract, because we don't know if we can believe in him moving forward. I understand that way of thinking. But what I don't understand is, why was AD the main piece to come back and one first-round pick? You could have put that out there, and Brooklyn would have traded you 10 first-round picks.
Correct.
Like, that's what that's where I've landed here. Like, the organization has to wear it no matter what. But what I don't understand is, you kept this thing quiet. You didn't get all these other teams trying to call you to get him and give up all their first round picks for worse franchises too. That's what blew my mind when I was reading everything.
They kept it quiet because you keep it quiet because you know what the pushback's going to be. So let's just say they come out publicly and say, we're trading him.
Yeah.
And then you get the offers out the door, and you would have got something way, way, way better than what they got, right?
Right.
Their fan base revolts against you, or at least a good portion of it does, and goes, excuse me, who's better than him? Why in the world would you trade him for anything? Why would you trade him for anything? So they can't do that, which reveals they know this is a remarkably stupid and scary thing to do. The only way this makes any sense to me is they know something about him physically that the Lakers are about to find out. That's the only way this makes any sense to me, because they don't want to give him the money for what I would deem a good reason, which is, we actually don't think he's going to be able to play as much as that contract would warrant, and therefore we have no shot of going anywhere if he's not available. Let's just say, all right, he's dragging his legs around, right? And he got through anyway. There's a carryover for that. Unless there is some kind of, we're going to find this out, that physically he can't be the player on a regular basis from here forward, unless I hear that from anybody, especially the Lakers, I don't understand it, other than you as an organization determined you don't want to pay anybody this, because that's all to me that this is that you just don't want to say that. You don't want to give somebody $375 million. That's all it is.
Yeah, and what I actually don't understand is, when I don't want to say Dallas is the same level as the Wizards, because they're not. They're much higher. But we've had to grin and bear this 3 different times with 3 different players, where Gilbert Arenas hurt his knee, and then they handed him that contract. But a lot of us, if you remember, it was well, what else are they going to have? Who else are they going to get here? They gave him the money. It didn't work out. Then there was John. Well, they're not a better team when he's not on the team, not on the team playing. So they gave him the max money. It ended up just being a mixed bag. They ended up trading him, right? Then we were all screaming about Brad, because we all knew Brad wasn't good enough to warrant.
Don't give him that.
Yes, correct. And because we all knew he's not changing games. He's not winning games for them. He didn't have those signature moments that those other 2 guys were playing with. Sometimes you just have to grin and bear it, though. And we were all saying no on that one. Luka is better than all 3 of those guys, and I think you run the risk. If you think he's having weight problems or drinking problems or whatever, I think you still sign him and run the risk, because I don't know who else you're getting that's going to be better than that. You just have to do this sometimes in the NBA, and the fact that they bucked from it, okay, you got to stand on it now. But I just think that's a mistake. You don't move on from players like that in this sport. It's so ridiculous.
No, you don't. I have to ask this question. Would Mark Cuban have done this? Because Mark Cuban is not the primary owner anymore. He just sold the team to the family that owns the Sands Corporation. They bought the team because they're going to build a whole new facility somewhere in the Dallas Metroplex area that's going to include a new stadium and a very large casino. And they're going to be the first one in Texas to do so. That's why they bought it. It hasn't happened yet, but that's why they bought it, or bought this portion of it. Mark Cuban is no longer the primary owner anymore. And I can't, someone's got to ask him, because he is still a part owner here. why did you say yes to this? Or did you have any say in yes to this? And I can't wait to hear him explain himself, because he would have done this if he was the primary owner of the team. No chance he would have done that.
No, I agree 100%. Like Mark is exactly what I just said too. He would try to move the pieces around Luka to try to make it work, or try to help him personally, or whatever the hell is going on, right? Like, he would have made it work because he understands the NBA. You don't move on from these types of caliber players. No. You don't know when you can get one back, if you ever get one back. Go look at our team here. We don't have one at the moment. And look at how many games they've won. So
we just had the number 2 overall pick. That guy's not Luka Doncic.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. And with Cuban too, like I wonder too, maybe he didn't want to do this, and they still did it anyways, right? Because maybe this ownership group doesn't want to pay a supermax contract.
That's all it is to me.
It is. I mean, that's got to be a factor here. Like, the fact is, they already looked at the salaries and went, "Oh, we don't want to pay that much for that long for this guy." That's the only other factor I can kind of, throw in here. Other than that, it was baffling. The timing of it was crazy too. Like, midnight on a Saturday was ridiculous.
I am 100% convinced that this is only about this ownership group has come in and drawn a line in the sand on what they want to pay people. And they do not want to pay, clearly, anybody what is the going rate. Now, yes, it's a ridiculous amount of money. I agree with that. But it's what the market bears. It is what has been collectively bargained by the players in the league. It's not like he makes the Mavericks lose money by making something like this. It's nothing like that. This is, you can't stomach paying anybody that number, to which I would say back to you then, why are you the owner of the team?
Right.
Why?
Right.
It falls within the context of a salary cap. You can choose what you do around a player like this to not get to whatever those levels are that you pay luxury taxes, but it's not like this wasn't collectively bargained. So you know what the score is going. This isn't baseball. You know what the score is going in. This is what this person is going to make. If you are uncomfortable doing that, then why do you own the team? Oh, you bought the team because it's a real estate play to put a casino up, and you actually don't care about the product on the court. That's what you're telling me when you do something like that, because there's no excuse to get rid of him. If they said, remove it on from Kyrie, even as good as he's been for them, I would go, he's older, he makes a lot of money, you do have a star on the team. Okay, like, I'll hear it out. Like, it doesn't make you better, not in the short term. It doesn't mean you're going to get back to where you were a year ago. But if you're like, Luka's been hurt all year, it's just not happening this year, we're going to move off of some of this money, start to build, he's older now anyway, I would hear out reasoning for that. You do not do this if you're serious about winning. You don't.
No.
With the one caveat of, if there's something physically wrong with him that the Lakers are about to find out about, which I don't believe would be the case, because I would imagine they're going to do due diligence on this, and because they'd have to be stupid not to go, wait a minute, why are you doing this? And if it is what I think it is, totally, we just don't want to pay somebody that kind of money. Well, then they just got the steal of all steals. And it's a ridiculous, ridiculous trade, because to your point earlier, had they just opened this up, they would have received a lot of blowback, which they're getting anyway, but they would have gotten a deal 10 times better than the one they actually accepted for him.
No, exactly right. To your point too about ownership, like knowing what to pay for this. This is troubling, because in the MLB, we just know the franchises that don't play, right? Like the Pirates, right? They don't pay anybody. They trade everybody. That's the concern with them having Paul Skeens, is that everyone's going, when are you just going to trade him for $1 million first-round picks or whatever? Right. In the NBA, everything is set. Like, if you have a supermax player, you pay him that supermax salary. There is no negotiating. Like, that's just what it is. In fact,
especially when he might be the best player.
Correct. And like, here's the thing too. Like, here's actually, we haven't even mentioned this either. Like, he's coming off a finals appearance too. Like, with whatever is going on, like, it's not like they've fallen short. They fell short to the Celtics, who were stacked last year. And you look at that as well, and you're kind of going, how much more do they need? If they got to the finals last year with this guy, you would think they have another shot with him for a couple of years with a window here, because he's only 25. And if you have that financial window where you know what you're going to pay for him and you don't have to negotiate or anything, why did you buy an NBA team if you don't want to do that? Like, that's where I've landed here. That's scary. That's a scary thing if you're a Mavericks fan to say, Like, who are you going to not sign now if you're not going to sign that guy? Like, that precedent has been set now. That's a little ridiculous for me.
Yeah. All right. This is going to burn your britches because you know where I'm going with this. This is Soto to me. It is. This is Soto to me.
Trade.
Listen,
Worst trade, though.
Very, yeah, way worse. But like very different sports, obviously. And, you know, you just saw what Soto got from the Mets. You actually don't know what the number is. With Luka, you do. In the NBA, you do know what the number is. You know what you're set up for, at least contractually, the obligations that are going to be there. In baseball, you don't. And that's changed over the last couple of years with Ohtani and now Soto kind of getting salaries that almost don't make any sense and actually don't for a lot of teams. Like, I'd hear out the learners going, we just can't pay somebody that now, as opposed to some of the other franchises that maybe can either swallow it or are willing to swallow it. So I know it's not apples to apples, but the premature nature by which Luka was traded is the same, in my opinion, premature nature that the Nationals traded Juan Soto. They didn't have to do it at the time. He is a generational player. Yes, there's going to be a contractual issue at some point down the road. And yes, it's a very different sport. But I remember when it happened that I felt like probably the way a lot of Mavericks fans feel today, like, if you don't want him on our team, who do you want on our team? Because there's nobody that's going to come along that's actually better than this guy. And to trade Luka Doncic at 25, like, is just, even at like 30, you would go, I still think he has something left in the tank. But at 25, where the prime of his career is coming, where he could actually get better. And the same thing happened with Soto. He was so young. I'm like, please don't do this to my kids, man. Like, we have a generational player on our team. I want them to be connected to you forever. And you just took them away. There's young Mavericks fans that don't understand this. In the same way that I didn't know how to explain this to my kids when I said I want you to be a fan of the Nationals. I can't explain this to you.
Yeah, I mean, the difference here is I've always felt the Nats knew they weren't going to compete under those last couple of years with Soto. Look at their record, the last couple of years. But that's a give and take situation. You are acknowledging that you're going to be bad and you need to wear why you were bad, right? Like, Rizzo didn't draft and develop well. They gave up a lot of prospects to make that World Series run. Like, there's some other factors. And they won a championship in 2019 with him on the team, right? This team did not. They only made it to
they were darn close with a team that nobody thought would get that far last year, right?
I agree.
So it's pretty darn close. Yeah,
I agree, but it still ultimately didn't result in a ring, which is what matters in this sport, in every sport, essentially, right? And once again, they moved on from Soto too, because I think with Boris, they were going to have that line in the sand if he wasn't going to sign, and they didn't know what that contract was going to look like. And look at what the contract ended up being, right? That's where, like, I'm back to your point too, though. They knew what they were going to have to pay Luka. Like, that's what I don't understand here. Like, that's the literal going rate for a player of that caliber. This is where it doesn't make sense. And you have to at least make this argument. The Nats got a bunch of studs back. Only one of those players has not made it to the major leagues so far, and one of them is a local franchise, changing type player in Woods. So, like, and I'm not calling him Soto at all.
He's the one, though, because they got all these guys back, but they are good, maybe above average MLB players.
Sure.
None of them are him.
That's right. No, 100%. Absolutely. And it depends what they build around him, which remains to be seen this offseason, to be completely honest.
Right.
But that's what I don't understand. Like, the Nats had the Dodgers and I believe it was the Padres bidding against each other for Soto for that trade that summer, right? Because it was Soto and Josh Bell in the package, right? That went to San Diego. You're telling me that, like, Dallas couldn't get one other team to start bidding this thing up a little bit? Like, that's where I've landed here. Rizzo got what he got because he got a bunch of teams bidding against each other. Dallas, they get what the Lakers wanted to give them. And they give up AD, but, like, I don't know. That's not doing it for me for your championship odds. That's all I'm saying.
That's the part where the GM who looks like an idiot today. Okay. Yeah. Like, just, and his, him trying to explain himself, like, dude, just quit, because like, you're never going to live this down. Like, ever, ever, ever. I know that you were directed to do this. Like, there's just no chance, because to trade him, you'd have to get the ownership's approval. You can't trade somebody like that without the ownership saying, which means it's the other way around. They wanted you to trade him. Okay, fine. You're in a bad spot. I get it. But you have to make the best of the bad spot, which you did not. Just quit. Like, that's because you're going to live. No one's going to take you seriously until the end of time. Don't do another press conference. It's absurd. It's always going to come back to, do you know what you're doing? What kind of decision making are you making? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So let me ask this question, because it took me a while. How long before you forgive him? Because when the Nationals traded Soto, they became my ex-girlfriend for a while. I couldn't talk about them. They became unspeakable to me because I thought they committed a sports crime. You just don't do something like that. Like, if it came down to in the last year of his contract and you're trying to negotiate with him and he won't negotiate with you, like kind of like Bryce Harper, where I didn't hate them. I didn't want him to be anywhere else. I wanted him to be here, but it became so abundantly clear that he didn't want to be here for whatever reasons. What are you going to do? Soto didn't want to leave, and it was 3 years premature, and it made no sense to do it to me at the time. So I became an unforgivable act. You don't do something like that. Dallas had a rough week between Jerry's press conference, the hiring of that coach, and now this. Oh, man. They went from, what was it? Near NBA championship, near Stanley Cup, World Series championship, 12-win football team to what's going on there? Wasteland in like a year.
Yeah, with this one, I think it's literally this season. It's like, okay, like I tell you this all the time. You have to give me ammo for a specific season. Well, okay, you're telling me defense wins championship. You roll them out there. Let me see what you do this year. Let me see what happens in 2025 playoff, because that's it. You get one season to figure this out. And look, a part of this trade is going to also be, how does he play with the Lakers? Let's be real here. Every time LeBron's gotten a star with him, they haven't been this amazing, unbeatable team either out there in LA. They won the championship in the bubble, but people are still talking about it was in the bubble. And you look at Redick being the coach. No one's been impressed by him being the coach of that team so far this year. In fact, people were already talking about another coach coming in there. So I think there is a factor here of, if he ends up being the missing piece for the Lakers, it's almost unforgivable, because the Lakers have done this over and over and over and over again. Like, this is what's always funny with the Lakers. They don't ever draft their talent. They always get it in trades. That's their whole entire franchise, is getting these guys in trades. Kobe was a trade. Shaq was a trade. LeBron, a trade. AD, a trade. All these guys are always trades. So it's like, if you were the sucker that gave them the superstar that they're missing, you just become another cog in the Lakers machine. So you get 1 year for me. You get 1 year.
Yeah, I put them into the unforgivable acts. And just considering this ownership group is brand new, this is the first major thing they've done. Oh man, guys. This would be David Rubenstein going up to the Orioles and trading Gunnar Henderson.
Yep, correct. Yeah, exactly right.
Because I don't want to pay him. But that's all it would be. That would be the only reason why you would do something like that. But he didn't. He showed up and got a pitcher. That's what he did. That's what the new owners typically do. Not this one. Not the Sands Corporation that they're going, house money makes all the rules, is what they're doing. And it's not a good start, which is why I'm like, Cuban, you've got to be embarrassed. Because Cuban, he turned that into a relevant franchise, turned them into a championship franchise, has tried in a lot of ways to get stars, support stars, put people around them. It hasn't totally worked, but he stuck by the stars. And here he is 1 year after selling the majority shares of it. And they go, different time now. We're not doing that anymore.
And I have to keep reiterating the point. There's no negotiating here. The contract is the contract. Like, with Soto, or even a guy like Max Scherzer, like, this is money that maybe you don't want to pay because someone else can always pay more. There is no wiggle room here. You knew what you were going to pay him.
Right.
And you just get that bad pit in the feeling of your stomach, like, oh, you got the next Dan Snyder here, don't you? Because, like, this is just one of those unforgivable acts in this sport. Like, in baseball, even with Soto or Scherzer, like, yes, they could have kept Soto. they still would have had a crappy record the next couple of years. Well, when you trade Luka Doncic from your team in the NBA, you are significantly changing your win-loss perspective.
Yeah.
So it's also just so much more impactful than any other trade we've seen in any other sport.
And the other thing too, which is this is lack of self-awareness. Like, so if there was one place that your fan base would not want him to be traded to for a bad return, it's them.
Yep.
It's them. Yep. Like, if you told me, like, we traded him to the Grizzlies, and we got, I don't know, whoever, Desmond Bain, like whoever.
And 5 first-round picks.
Right. That I think, like, you're like, this is awful. But it's not that. They got fleeced in a deal with the Lakers, and you now know the Lakers are going to be relevant again because you sent him there? Like, that is a crime on top of a crime. Like, what are you doing? Why would you do something like that? And I will say this for the Lakers, because I made fun of them for years, and everybody does. LeBron doesn't run them anymore.
Yep.
He doesn't run them anymore. They finally woke up. This probably has something to do with this stupid stunt that they pulled off with his kid, which I'm all for if that's what you want to do, but you're the Lakers. You're not the stunt team. We're the Wizards over here. Tallest guy and shortest guy are on the team together. Hey, come see everyone else's really good players play here. We're tanking on purpose. Isn't this fun? We're 6-93. Like,
7.
That's... They did win the other day. I saw that.
They did.
They did win the other accidentally. But like, the Lakers are the Lakers again. They finally did something without the approval of one of their players. They finally did. They finally realized he's a player on the team. He's not holding you hostage. And what an escape hatch that is for them, because they're going nowhere with the team is constituted. LeBron is going to retire at some point. AD's contract is not getting better with age if he's the primary player on the team. Wow, they got their get out of jail free card on that one. So I'll give the Lakers this. While I can't believe that's the deal they got, they took it and ran with it and realized who's in charge here, the management or the players. We don't care what LeBron thinks of this.
Well, and what was the report right after? It was LeBron's going to stay with the Lakers past the trade deadline. So it also tells you as well that, like, those rumors were popping up again. Remember, he almost went to Golden State last year, but he wore
the Knicks towel. Remember that? Like, on team, he put the Knicks towel on.
He was stirring it last year. This year he wasn't stirring it, but they also were bringing up, like, do they trade him again? This is them going, no, we're the Lakers. We don't do that type of thing. And I think they were sick of being that type of team.
I'll tell you what, after getting Luka Doncic, I would trade him if he's open to it, because the time is now anyway. I've been saying this for a while. They would be better off if he ended up going somewhere else at his age with the team in the state that it's in. He can't win with it as it is. He actually, if he wants to win another championship, actually needs to go somewhere else. And he's already done the thing with his son. That's over. It's occurred. They've played together. There's pictures of it. There's proof. He can go somewhere else and do that. So if I were him, I'd actually want to be open to that. And for them, what a double down that would be. What would they get for him? I don't know, but something valuable from somebody who wants to add him. They would get something for him. Big.
The thing is, LeBron's still very, very effective. So if they're trying to win a championship, I don't think you trade him. Like, that's. I don't think you outweigh.
If you don't think Luka's going to get healthy enough to really help you this year to do something like that, then you've got to move LeBron now. That's the way I look at it.
The Lakers don't do that, though. Like, that's like not a part of their image. They worry about their image with this type of stuff. I'll
tell you what, though, who doesn't like who's probably a more relevant star than LeBron James? Luka Doncic. You think he likes being on a team where he doesn't blot out the sun?
I mean, I'm just saying the Lakers don't do this. That's all. Like, I think it's all about optics.
Right thing, but now that they found their you-know-whats and they're actually doing things for the good of the franchise, moving, because they forgot who they were for a minute there. For a few years, they were the LeBrons, not the Lakers. And I'm like, guys, you're the Lakers. You're the team with the most stars in the history of the game, with all the championships, with the glitz, the glamour, and the team that moves on from people when it's time and a new star comes in. And for like 3 years, you guys let the worst GM on earth run your team, who happened to be a player, so much so that he got his kid, who wouldn't have been drafted, to be picked and playing on your team.
Here's the other side of this too, though. Like, the Thunder are going to be the 1 seed, right? Most likely. The Lakers are probably going to sneak in. Are you saying LeBron and Luka, if you put them up in a 7-game series against that young team, don't have a chance in a 7-game series?
That's
like,
true.
That's where game to game. Like, I'm not saying I'm picking them every time, but I will push. I'll pick them to push that thing to 7, and you don't know what's going to happen afterwards.
JJ Redick's like, I'm back, baby.
Yeah, he is.
Pumped.
Exactly. He's like, I can show up against any team now and look
Doug
a lot better.
Gottlieb is asking if they need a new assistant. They're like, pumped.
Right, exactly. So that's the other side of this too. Like, you hold on to LeBron because, I don't know, LeBron and Luka in any game against anybody, they've got a good chance of showing up in a day that ends in Y. So
we'll see. It'd be interesting because, like, LeBron's contract runs out this year, doesn't it?
I think it's this year or next year. I forget which one. Yeah.
That's going to be an interesting one. What does he do?
Right.
What does he do? Does he want to stay? Do they want him to stay? I don't know. That's going to be an interesting one. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630 Sports Capital.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
All right, welcome back. Super Bowl week begins with a rematch of a couple of years ago, Eagles and Chiefs. And I got to tell you here early, I don't really have a lean on this one. Having seen the Eagles in person 3 times, I know how good they are. And they've lost once since October. And the Chiefs lost once for real without playing Carson Wentz and all their backups. So this is Battle of the Titans, even though one looked like one for the majority of the season and one really didn't. But the one you trust is the one that didn't, and the one you don't trust is the one that did. It's a strange Super Bowl this time around because I keep waiting for, when's the other shoe going to drop on the Chiefs? You can't win every game close like this. And then on the other side, I'm like, you guys know you're going to internally combust at some point and start hating each other, and then you're going to lose a game and start pointing fingers and reading books on the sideline. Like, we all know that. So let's see what happens on Sunday.
No, absolutely. Like, I'm leaning Chiefs here only because if it is a close game, I think we all know who we pick in crunch time in this game, yes. For both of them. And you look at, outside of, unfortunately, the Commanders score for the Eagles, they didn't really blow anyone out on their way to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs were the same way. The Chiefs, though, were funny. I didn't think they could score that much. The Bills punched them in the mouth the other day, last Sunday, and they dropped 31 and 32 or whatever the final score was there. They've demonstrated they can kind of bounce back and play their old style of offense. I'm leaning Chiefs here, but it's not much because of Saquon mainly. Like, Saquon here, I think, is the player that I'm looking at that if he ends up performing well, he's going to be the X factor because the Chiefs haven't gone up against a running back of his caliber. And that defense has been very, very good all year. Can they stop him? We've seen this Eagles offensive line push everybody around. So I think that's where it's ultimately going to come down.
Hold on. Let me look at the Chiefs. You're saying you don't think they didn't play. Well, week 1, they played Derrick Henry. It's week 1.
Yep.
Week 3, they played Bijan. Right. So he had a great year. Let's see.
Those scores didn't get out of hand, though, is what I'm saying. Like, they played those running backs fine. They didn't let anyone shred them, is what I'm getting at here. Yeah,
they didn't hit all the big run game teams. You're right. They didn't catch a lot of that. That's true.
Here was kind of the X factor here, though. Cook actually played well against them in that AFC Championship game, and the Bills got away from him in the second half.
Buffalo, I thought Buffalo was going to win this year because what's underrated about them now is they actually have a legitimate running game, which they didn't have in years past. Like, they always had a little better defense than they do now. Allen is still Allen. If Allen doesn't turn the ball over 1,000,000 times, he's incredible. But what they didn't have was they had a very average run game, and now they don't. Actually, Cook and their line is actually, it's not great, but it's good. It's good, and effective. Yep. And so that's why I thought they were going to win this year. I also, I've been waiting for the Chiefs to lose a close game to somebody. and it hasn't happened yet. On your point about Saquon, I did see an interview with Howie Roseman, who said he knew that he could have this historic year there. Duh. Like, they had what turned out to be run-of-the-mill average running backs who end up having big years for them because of their offensive line, because of their scheme, but mainly because of the personnel up front. And so Saquon, motivated, pissed off that the team who can't win nothing, and he just wanted to stay there because he loved being a Giant, but they told him, you cost too much when I asked for $13 million and you offered 12.6. Like, it's just so absurd what happened that it was over something like that. He shows up there and he does this. No kidding. Will he do it again? Probably not. Actually, historically, when guys have numbers like this, there's a drop off. Like, will it be significant? We can only hope, as like Commanders fans and anybody else in the NFL, you can only hope that it probably won't happen again. He's still going to be very good. But I also knew, I think we all knew when we watched that Hard Knock show in real time and listened to them and their reasoning going, you guys are going to look like fools by the end of this. And it didn't help that it got publicized. I think it just added more fuel to Saquon's fire to go, really? You're going to show everybody what we talked about? Okay, watch this.
No, absolutely. And my favorite stat on these two teams, the Eagles and the Giants, were the Giants had one of the worst offensive lines in football last season. Their running backs got touched faster than any other team except one, I think. They were 31st in the league of when their running backs would get hit. The number one in the league was the Eagles. So, like, it was also this factor of, like, oh, you mean the 3-yard runs that Saquon is getting when he's having to, bang it on the inside? You mean the Eagles won't even let him get touched until he's 3 or 4 yards down the field? That's where I knew Saquon was going to just absolutely destroy them because the offensive line was so much better here too. Their offensive line has been great for years and years and years. So all they needed was one of these home run hitting running backs to finally come in at the right price because he is elite and they signed him for that. And look at the year that he is having. I mean, look at some of the runs he had against, the Commanders. He was untouched on a few of those. Like, it's unreal what they've done with him.
The one issue that the Eagles defense has, I mean, to speak about the game for a moment, is they have trouble with tight ends, and it's partially because of the way that they defend. I knew Zach Ertz was going to have a big game last week. I thought Austin Eckler would too, because they play their safeties way back. And so it's going to be tough to beat them deep, even with the speed receivers they have in Mahomes and everything extending plays. It just is because they win with 4. So they don't have to bring a lot of pressure very often. And so, but where the voids are typically kind of in the middle of the field, the intermediary zone. So that leads to Travis Kelce potentially, but it's not just him. They have like 3 tight ends that can catch the ball. So that's going to be they're going to have to adjust a little bit. Otherwise, I think their tight ends are going to kind of eat them up. And then if they adjust a little bit and just loosen that thing up or tighten up the screws just a little bit, that's where Xavier Worthy can hit you over the top. To me, I don't know, like, the Chiefs have just been a cheat code for so long now that it's hard actually to pick against them. And considering their strength at receiver is actually the position that the Eagles have a problem with defensively, like the one thing they have a problem with, that would concern me if I were Philadelphia going into this.
The other thing is, look at the age on the Eagles defense. It's really young. Like, how this works in Super Bowls. There's a lot of sitting around. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance. The week is not normal. Like,
true.
You know how this works too. Like, I don't like to put a lot of stock into this because I think it is a little overrated, but they've got young cornerbacks. Jalen Carter's in year 2. Like, look at some of the younger pieces on that defense.
Who's going to say something dumb during Super Bowl media day?
I was just going to say, pay attention to what off the field story comes out on which team. Because guess what? The Chiefs are going, this is another business trip. This is the 3rd time we've done this in a row. Yeah. They've done this before. And not only have they done it before, they've done it a bunch of times before. I have a feeling the Chiefs are going to be really buttoned up on that side of things too, because they've just done it so many times. Like, I think that is a factor here a little bit.
Yeah, I think last week, like in hindsight, there were some signs of the week got a little big on Washington, and they'll never admit that, like, they didn't expect to be there. And honestly, they earned it. It wasn't like they didn't earn to be there, but like, we all know that, like, that was a surprising run. Like, them making the playoffs, winning a playoff game, like, that wasn't that far out of the realm to me, but like getting to where they got to and then having a literal belief that they could knock them off because they had, I think that was a little beyond expectation. And it was by the end of the week when they started kind of admitting that, like, we heard the criticisms, the head wasn't down as much. And then, unfortunately, I think there was, like they made a couple of their own type of own goal errors, the fumbles, the end of the half kickoff return, even the opening kickoff was fumbled. Like, I just think like the first play from scrimmage, Saquon pops off a big run. Like the week got big on them a little bit, and maybe that's unfair, and they can tell me if that's unfair. But to your point of this week might get real big on Philadelphia's young team, especially on that side of the ball, and their quote unquote veteran leadership may not like each other all that much. So this could be an interesting week for them.
No, absolutely, and like you even look at a guy like Saquon and AJ Brown, like that's the first Super Bowl for those guys too, who are superstars. Like the offensive line and Jalen are basically the guys that held it down last time. So I think this is going to be a factor. Like I said, I don't want to put too much stock into it, but you know how this goes. There's a lot of sitting around during Super Bowl week too. It's different. Yeah. I'm just saying the Chiefs have done this before. This is normal for them. So
yeah, it's hard to insulate yourself. It gets tough.
Right. Exactly.
Let's see. A couple things have popped up this week as well. Jamar Chase says he just wants what's fair, which I thought was the right thing to say. And what is fair is the biggest contract for any receiver in the NFL. So he doesn't want to say that because if you say that, everybody gets on you, but I'll say it for him. It is. And if the Dallas Mavericks are in charge of the Cincinnati Bengals, he'll be traded here because I'll take him tomorrow. I think every other team would take him tomorrow. If he's not the best receiver in the NFL, there's an argument I would have to argue with you of actually who's better than him. So I rarely say this, but sorry, Bengals, you're going to have to give him the biggest contract for any receiver ever if you want to retain him, period.
Yeah. I mean, and we know how this works. Like Jerry made the mistake last year. You give him the top money and then the next guy gets more money. Like if you get out in front of it, you have to avoid whatever the next contract is going to look like here. And look, the Bengals, this is a funny spot for them. I remember when Joe Burrow signed his contract extension, Adam Schefter went out of his way to say, oh, the Bengals have been reluctant to ever give out big contracts, but business is a booming with Joe Burrow. Well, is their line in the sand not paying a number one wide receiver? We're about to find out, I think, because I could see
they're not going to have both he and Higgins. Like, that's done. They're not going to do both. And you know what? I think their fans need to understand that that's not happening. This is like when Strasburg and Rendon came up at the same time. You're not getting them both.
The difference here, though, is also Joe Burrow, if he is an elite quarterback, you make your receivers better. You don't need two of these guys. I will make the argument you need one of them, though. Like, you don't just let that type of talent walk, but you get someone else in there that he can make better. But you're not getting both, but you should hold on to Chase. Like, Chase is elite. You don't throw away those types of quarterback wide receiver connections while they're sitting on your team.
He's an absurd talent.
Yeah.
If you're not paying him, you're not paying anybody. Right. He's an absurd talent. Yeah. Last thing real quick on the NFL. Why does everyone think Pete Carroll wants Russell Wilson back? Right? Like they keep trying to link him to going to Vegas and they don't really have a quarterback. So problem solved, right? I don't think so. You think Pete Carroll's coming back to run that back with Russ with a new team? I don't buy that for a second. He'll never say it, but prove me wrong at a later date, but I do not think that he will be playing for the Raiders because Pete Carroll is not going to have that happen again. I don't think
This one screamed to me Russ's PR team.
Yes.
That's what it screamed to me, that it was Russ still needs a starting gig somewhere. He's probably not going to get re-signed by Pittsburgh. And for some reason, and I've told you this, over the last couple of years, for some reason, Vegas is a destination. And I don't understand why. Mainly because of the organization. I understand because of the city, but the organization is
people want to live there. That's all.
But the organization
is live.
It's nothing special though. The organization, there's a lot of dysfunction. The owner is weird. I don't know. So this one screamed to me though, Russ trying to get out in front of it of, they need a quarterback. They're not going to draft high enough to get the one that they want. Maybe he goes there for a year or so, but I don't see it happening.
I think they can get Shador if they want him. Honestly, I don't think Shador is going to go as high as people think he is. So I think they can get him if they want him. All right, let me take a quick break. Bear watch the show. ESPN 630 to Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Had a heavyweight showdown here with the Capitals over the weekend. Second game in a row that they got behind, fought back, this time against a really good team, this time at home as opposed to the end of a trip against Ottawa. Got to overtime. Second game in a row, they lost in overtime anyway. So I guess salvaged points, is a home loss, though. Had to come back. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I feel okay. You have to remember when you come back from literally the longest road trip of the season, it takes you a minute to acclimate back to your home life a little bit. So they literally flew back Friday, had their game Saturday. The players were openly talking about it, how it was weird to be back at MedStar for morning skate and weird to be back at Cap One. Look, it took them a couple periods to wake up. They did wake up. They salvaged a point. I'm okay with it. Do I feel great about it? No. But also, the Jets are also elites. I've been talking about them all season. They're the only team hanging with the Caps in terms of points. The Jets are now first in the league. Caps are second in the league. And look, you didn't get killed on home ice. I know that's not the goal or whatever, but two high-scoring teams, I'm okay with this one. You didn't get blown out in your building, and you clawed your way back into the third period. I can't complain much about that one.
It also feels like, I can't believe this is happening after he had the injury he had, but it looks like Ovechkin has enough time to actually break this record this year. What's interesting about this is, like, for a couple of years going, it was, we're a circus. We're a record-breaking circus, and we can't do two things at once. And somehow this front office flipped this roster around to do the two things at once. It'll be interesting to see late in the season. I guess it won't matter because they'll be in. They'll be playing for positioning at that point, how they play it, because remember, playoff goals don't count towards this record. So he has to do it by the end of the regular season. How are they going to handle that if he's really, really, really close and there's just a few games left? It'll be interesting to see how they play it.
I think they're going to continue to play it the way exactly they have. He gets his ice time, and then when there's an empty net, he's out there on the ice. They've handled this the same way that they have all season long. I don't think he gets any extra shifts. Ovechkin is Ovechkin at this point. He's an older guy that doesn't do much on defense, and even on offense is only effective on certain nights. Certain teams play him a certain way.
When he's out of gas, he is out of gas.
100%. Absolutely. But you have to commend him because he's at least, trying really hard early on in some of these games. But yeah, I don't think they're going to change the way that they play at all here. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What I will say is this is a factor this season. And I'm starting to see a little bit, in some of the articles popping up from TSN and The Athletic and stuff like this. The Caps have slowly but surely gotten themselves back up into top 10 in terms of best prospect pools. I have a feeling here, like, I know Ted doesn't like to do it with the Caps, but I have a feeling he's going to at least rubber stamp them going, if you think we should trade a few prospects to go on a run this season, go for it. They have the room to do it for once. They can trade a few top prospects and be okay with it on the other side. Like, before, they were holding on to these guys like Mike Rizzo, like untouchable, whatever. I've just got this feeling that if they want to upgrade and there's a good fit out there, I think they're going to rubber stamp moving on from a bigger type of prospect that we're used to. Not Ryan Leonard. Ryan Leonard is untouchable. Don't get me wrong on that. But I just have this feeling there's all this talk about how many young players they have in their system. There's not enough room to play them all. I got a feeling here, if there's a good fit with a really good player, they're going to go and get them.
All right. Keep an eye on that. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you from New Orleans tomorrow. Brad, watch the show. ESPN 630 Sports Capital.